In America, everyone counts, and the 2020 census is how that great promise is kept. Respond today online, by phone, or by mail, and help inform hundreds of billions in funding for education, health programs, and more. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov. This is what we are seeing is we're seeing, again, enormous interest out there. I was looking at a piece from Perry Bacon, and in his particular piece, he talked about young voters and how young black voters and older black voters view Trump and the Democratic Party very interesting in a different way. What I found to be interesting, I'm going to pull this graphic up because it really did. It was quite fascinating when what they pulled up because it spoke to, again, this divide between black voters and older black voters. Here's what's interesting. This was a 538 poll that was done. Go to my iPad, please. Position: Trump is racist. 18 to 29, 79% of blacks say yes. 60+% black people who are 60 or older, 90% say he's racist. Trump is incompetent. 74% of 18, 29-year-old African Americans say he's incompetent. 90% of African Americans 60 or older. I vote to support the black community. 18 to 29, only 54% said yes. 71% of voters 60 years or older. Democratic Party is welcoming to black Americans. Only 47% of 18 to 29-year-olds and 76% of folks who are 60 plus. Then we go to the next one. Trust congressional Democrats to do what is best for black people. Just 43% of blacks 18 to 29, 73% of blacks 60 plus. The overall number is just 57%. Let's get into this one. I do not always like Trump's policies, but I like the way he shows strength and defies the establishment. 35% of 18 to 25-year-olds, just 10% of 60-plus-year-olds. Definitely motivated to vote. Only 29% of voters 18 to 29 that are black, 78% of black voters 60 plus. Trust congressional Republicans to do what is best for black people. 29% of black voters 18-29, just 8% of voters 60 plus. And the last one, GOP is actually it's two. GOP is welcoming to black Americans. 28% of black voters 18-29 say yes. Just 7% of black voters are 60 plus. And the last one, I don't vote because it doesn't make a difference. 21% of black voters 18-29, 2% of black voters 60 plus, overall 14%. What do you make of this, LaTosha?
You know, it's interesting. I actually can see it. You know, I think there's a couple of things. There are three things it's on one hand, it's shocking and I want to be like, what? You know, but on the other hand, if I'm in my political scientist hat, some of it makes sense to me. One, when I look at the numbers around how they identify with the party, that makes sense to me. When you look at it in terms of party loyalty for young people in that age, whether it's Democrat or Republican, they do not have the same sense. That has been for a number of years. They do not have the same attachment to political parties as their predecessors. Even our generation, Generation X, does not have the same kind of identification with parties and party loyalty as the baby boomers. So what we know is in terms of party loyalty, that has changed drastically across the board, black, white, particularly with young folks, younger generations don't have that kind of attachment. So those numbers in terms of how they see the parties, I think they're seeing the parties and they see themselves as independent voters. We know that. I think that's across the board and data has shown that. The second thing though, is I think that we're also in this age of sound bites. I have been looking, people have been sending me information, a screenshot of conversations happening on Facebook and other places. Some way even when we look at the news cycles now, which is why I'm so glad you got your show rolling so we can really get deep into these issues, because for the most part, what the national media has done is it's sound bites and it's political pundits and it's really based on opinions, right? And not necessarily, we're not having a conversation where we're unpeeling this. The reason why I'm saying this is because people are really attaching to information based on sound bites, not necessarily an analysis about understanding the context of some of the politics and the political landscape. A case in point of that is some of the messages that I've been receiving are messages in these groups, where people are saying, well, Trump is good for the economy. The truth of the matter is, we had a conversation, Cliff Albright and I had a meeting with a political economist just the other day who talked about 91% of Americans have not done better, but actually done worse after Trump, if you factor in inflation. 9% of Americans have done very, very, very well, right? And so when you're talking about who's done well with people being employed, because I have to remind folks that employment, if you're measuring the economy about us being employed, that's different from measuring the economy and how well the economy is doing based on how well people are doing. People may be working, but oftentimes people are working and are underpaid or don't even make enough money to take care of their jobs, take care of their livelihood. The bottom line is, I think that there's one element around sound bites, how we're grabbing hold to this notion, even in the economy piece. We can just go from COVID-19, that 80% of Black businesses didn't get any of the stimulus money. So how are we going around saying that Trump is good for Black business? How are we saying right now it's projected that 50% of small Black businesses will not make it to the end of the year because of COVID-19. I haven't heard him say anything about, and I haven't seen any money of a special stimulus on making sure that we get resources. So the bottom line is there's sound bites that I think that people are grabbing hold to, whether it's on Twitter or Facebook, that I keep seeing over and over and over again, that there literally is making some impact in our community. There are commercials running right now. I got a phone call 2 days ago from an advocate in the state of Florida who advocates who really is working in the space around felony reenfranchisement and some other issues. And he said that he heard these commercials. He keeps hearing these commercials in Florida to the point where he was like, if I didn't know any better, I would want to vote for Trump. Because Trump, in terms of integrity, he will say whatever he needs to say to do whatever he needs to do so he can maintain power. And so there are these sound bites out there that he's better for the economy, that he is doing good it's good for Black folks, and that he's about his business. And then the third and the final point that I think when I'm listening to some of the numbers that you're talking about, I think part of it is a reframing of power. That when we're looking at, that's why Black voters matter. When we're talking to folks, we're not just talking about voting and participation. We're talking about power. There is an element in this country that actually has aligned themselves to really believe that this dominant bully leadership that's a form of legitimate power. And we're accepting of that because there's something about this country that's quite frankly, that is a value of it that likes to be the bully. You like to be the biggest and the baddest and whoever I can bully. And so there's a certain kind of personality that Trump has a certain level of charisma. He comes off like the big, strong leader, and there's some kind of attraction, I do think, that there's a segment of population.
No, I mean, we've actually seen that. I want to bring in Rena, Robert, and Scott on this. And to that particular point, Rena, we have seen that there are people who are appealed by the John Wayne attitude of Donald Trump, and especially Black men. And what you find here, because in fact Trump apparently is going to be going to Atlanta on Friday to talk about Black economics at this event. Paris Denard, Pastor Daryl, Scott, Diamond and Silk. Oh my God, that minstrel show. And again, what they're trying to say is, he has been unbelievable, yet he keeps touting, before COVID, this was the Black unemployment rate. The reality is the Black unemployment rate right now is double than what it was when he was inaugurated. It's double, okay? The Black home ownership rate dropped. The number of Black businesses that have closed, significant number. So he's actually just lying. But it's like, but people are falling for the Okie Doke. Oh my God, he's so wonderful, he's so great. And again, they're hammering that, and they want to see those numbers. And what they want to do, and he said in 2016, Rena, he said, Black people don't vote. And he thanked them. He thanked them for not voting, saying, y'all help me become president. Go ahead.
You think he didn't see what happened with Doug Jones down south? He's scared. Internally, this man knows that he hasn't done anything for Black America, and he's scared that Black people will turn out to do the right thing, which is vote against him, right? Because they know when they are being gaslit. Black people know when they're being gaslit. Because look, generations, history, we can speak to how people of color have been treated in this country. And when you talk about Black and Indigenous folks, and then people of color like myself, there has not been a fair America under Donald Trump's folks, because the whole sentiment has been that there are good people on both sides. Those are his exact words, right? So when we look to the future, what do we see? A whole lot of gaslighting. This is the gaslighter in chief. He thinks if he says it in a certain way and he says it enough times, then it's truth. And look, LaTosha she made incredible points about just the short attention span we have here and how the news is given to us and absorbed in those who are in my age range. Let's be honest. You know, I'm a young mom in my mid-30s. You know, we absorb things in sound bites because that's how it's been given to us. And so we become accustomed to that. And then we think that is truth. And so in my study of the American presidency, I've had a great interest in it in the past decade, especially. I've worked 2 U.S. presidential campaigns, one of those being an independent and another of those a very long shot Quixotic Republican campaign. And in traveling the country, I have seen some truths. And one of the biggest truths is that we wrongly conflate the success of a president with the success of an economy. And that is just one thing that I have tried to hammer in people's minds this election more than any other time. I have said these are Obama-era policies, actually, that Trump was gifted this beautiful economy.
Well, first of all, also he was gifted the economy. He was gifted all his money, which came from his dad. He's a failed businessman. But somebody said something to me today, Robert. They said you have a generation of people who grew up where it's all about money and power. It's about houses. It's about cars. It's about wealth, which means that you're smart and you're great. And Donald Trump falls right in line with that theory. So when he touts, all these rappers who love hanging around him and name dropping his name, that is now currency at the ballot box. Agree or disagree?
I agree, and I think the Trump style is something that that in private you'll hear a lot of, particularly African American men, as you said that they're a fan of. They like the "I don't give a what" attitude about everything. But I do think we have to take this trip to Atlanta. You know, I'm your resident Atlantan here. We have to take this into consideration because Republicans don't come to Georgia 40 days before the election. You only come to a state and make a presidential visit to swing states. That's why you see Trump in Michigan. That's why you see them in Florida and Ohio. You don't come to Florida unless your internal polling data is showing you that you are at risk. Remember, we have 2 Senate seats up for grabs here. We have Pastor Warnock, who's my pastor at Ebenezer, even though I've been going to Bedside Baptist recently. We have Pastor Warnock, who is running. We also have John Ossoff, who is running. And Stacey Abrams only lost by a razor-thin margin in this state. Just today, Fulton County announced that they are changing 91 voting precincts from the primary in June for the election in November. So we're going to have mass chaos on election day. We have the Republican Party suing to stop increased counting of absentee ballots in this state. This state is absolutely a toss-up, which means they are going to be fighting on home territory. It's the Democrats' job to bring it home. If you got them fighting in Georgia and North Carolina and Virginia and other seemingly key or seemingly solid red states 39, 40 days before the election, that means that they know they are on the outs and they have to figure out a way to win. But Democrats cannot try to win this in hiding. Still, Donald Trump dominates the news cycle every single day. They dominate the policy discussions. The country spends every week following whatever this week's scandal is and forgetting about what the last one is. Democrats have to focus their fire and ensure that they're getting that messaging across, because just like in boxing, the tie goes to the aggressor, and Donald Trump is being the aggressor right now.
Before I go to Scott, Robert was talking about the news cycle, and the reality is today Joe Biden was in North Carolina with NBA player Chris Paul talking about issues with the economy. I just want to share just a little bit of that before I hear from you. Go ahead.
How y'all doing? Mayor Lyles, thank you so much. Vice President Biden, welcome to Charlotte, North Carolina. Feels so good to be home. You guys know I was in a bubble for a while recently. Man, this is important. This is extremely important, and that's why I'm glad to be a part of this conversation. Being born and raised in North Carolina, this is home for me. Always will be home for me. And so to be a part of this conversation and to just have real conversations. We had a conversation in the back, and I just thought about how grateful and privileged I am to be a part of these tough, difficult conversations, especially during this time. Being a parent, having an 11-year-old son, an 8-year-old daughter, these times are very crucial and very important. And I can't explain enough how much it means to talk about the things that have to be discussed. And you guys being here, everything is about respect. Everything is about respect. So teaching my kids about respecting the office, having these conversations, and that's why this election is important. A lot of times people say my vote doesn't count. I come from humble beginnings where a lot of people where you live and stuff say it doesn't matter. You know, as black people, it doesn't matter. You know, if I vote, what's gonna really change? You know, we still got the same restaurants on the corners. We don't have the benefits of having places to eat. You know, our homes, that's not going to change, right? So the only way that we can really enforce our power is by voting. So this conversation is unbelievably important. So glad you guys are here so that we can ask some real questions. So without further ado, I would like to introduce the next president of the United States, Joe Biden.
All right, folks, we're gonna stream that later. I want to go to Scott again. This is about having a message that speaks directly to people. And again, Trump wants to say for black people, oh, everything has been great and wonderful and rosy. He lied in that town hall with George Stephanopoulos, saying every category black people have been doing so much better under him.
Well, the message we need to be tailored to black men, because notwithstanding that 20 or 30% of young black people who see something positive in Donald Trump, that's shocking to me. But the message to black men to vote, because I got to tell you, it's more than that machoism with black men and how they voted for Donald Trump or how they see him. It's that anti-immigration message. It really is. I've had more men come up to me in airports and even in my own building when we were in that building, who said to me the following: I voted for Donald Trump. I lost my job to some illegal immigrants. That's why I'm pushing a mop. And nobody on the Democratic Party is speaking to me in my job loss. And I said, well, what about his racism? He's a racist. They say, yeah, Scott, I've been called the N-word before. Let that sink in for a minute, Roland, because we're right about all this, and all of us are analysts, and we're all playing inside baseball. But the guy and the people that come up to me and say that are frontline voters. I'm not going to call them dumb or uninformed. They're just frontline voters. And that's the messaging that they're getting. And they vote on that messaging that they're getting. So the Democrats need to talk about black men. We know the story of black women. We need to keep that message going. But we need that 10 to 15% that the Republicans are projecting that they're going to get from black men. We need to do something about that. Because when you say all hands on deck and we need to win big in all of these states, that 10 to 15%, even if it's false, we know Trump underpolls. He underpolls with black men too, because you hear them talk about that all the time. But we got to do something and give something in our messaging to black men to make sure they come out and vote. Because the negative messaging or the lies they're being told, there are a lot of black men who listen to that nonsense. And you've got to get under those numbers and explain why that doesn't make the sense. It's too hard for some people or most people to really understand the lies he tells. That's why the soundbite comes in.
I want to go, right. I mean, LaTosha, I want to bring you in. Look, you've been out there, and I remember you had posted something on Twitter when you even had some family members yourselves who you said you had to take a nap when you found out a couple of black men in your family had voted for Trump.
Yeah,
I did. You know, it's interesting. Now, I'll be honest. I've not heard the issue around immigrants. I've actually. It goes back. That goes back. I'll be honest with you. That goes back when I had my radio show in Chicago on WVON Radio.
That goes back to 2006. I've heard that point Scott has made for the last 14 years. But go ahead, LaTosha.
No, I agree. I've heard that before. I've not heard that as a core issue this time. As we've been going on the ground, that's not what I've been hearing. I'm not saying it's not there.
Right,
what I
right.
have been hearing is around criminal justice. There's a residue of the conversation around immigration, but I've not heard that as a predominant issue with the men that we've been talking to. The ones we've been talking to, what I've been hearing is really more around criminal justice reform and this message around from Kamala and Biden and what they've done, and this First Step Act, which nobody's really unpeeling the fact that the DOJ is blocking all of that. That's really smoke and mirrors. And so I think that we really got to lean into that. The two things consistently I've been hearing around with men has been related to the criminal justice system and the economy. It's about money and this idea that Trump is actually bringing more money in. And, I do think that as we're talking about, I agree totally that there has to be a message that is tailored towards Black men to really talk about what this administration plans to do. But I also think that we do need, because we are in the space of sound bites, we've got to dispel this piece. The majority, I'm telling you, the majority of what I've been hearing is related to Biden is bad on criminal justice and Trump gonna get us some money in our pockets. Like, I've consistently heard that out of everything. And even when the commercials that are running, that's Trump are running, he's attacking the Democrats on that end. And so, some way we've got to, and let me say this, brothers got to organize. Like the bottom line is brothers got to get out here and organize. We've been organizing and pushing work, and even with the women leading. And there are some men who have been standing in the gap, but part of what I have been hearing has been related to money, and this idea that somehow Trump has been better around criminal justice.
Absolutely. LaTosha, look, we certainly appreciate all the work that y'all have been doing. I do want to ask you about this last story here. In Pennsylvania, 2 million folks have requested mail-in ballots, and those requests have been going out. Now there's this whole issue with naked ballots. Have you heard about this and how it's impacting people?
People are really confused and concerned about it. If you take a ballot, you put it in the wrong envelopes. There are 2 envelopes. And if you don't put it in the proper envelope, that means when you cast your ballot, it won't be counted. It's another form of voter suppression, right? And so people are confused and concerned about it.
So there are 2 ballots. So there's an envelope. There's an envelope that the envelope comes in.
Right. And there's an envelope that you're supposed to mail it back in. And they're saying that if you write, because why the envelope matters, I don't know, right?
Right.
Right. But if you mail it in the wrong envelope, they're not going to count it.
Right. And so I saw one local story. They said about 100,000 people have already been impacted by that.
That's right. That's right. Black Voters Matter is actually headed. We're doing caravans all through there, but we're kicking off our tour in Pittsburgh this weekend. We'll be in Pittsburgh on Saturday. We're doing a caravans throughout the city. As a matter of fact, in Pittsburgh, it's Black Voters Matter Day on Saturday. We've got activities going on all over the city. And in Pennsylvania, will also be the first year that they're doing early voting. And so there's a lot of attacks, because there are a lot of attacks from Republicans because of that. And so we'll be there this weekend doing a tailgate event on a tailgate and voter outreach event on Sunday as well. And in addition to Pennsylvania, I do want to highlight what's happening in Wisconsin. In Wisconsin, there's 129,000 voters, which is also a key swing state. 129,000 voters that the Republicans, a Republican interest group called WHEEL, wants to take off the ballot. That literally what's interesting in Wisconsin, since the Democrats actually control the state now, they don't want to drop these voters. They're being sued by Republicans, right, to force them to drop these 129,000 voters. It's going to the Supreme Court, will make a ruling on it this coming Tuesday. Ironically, we've also had some of the same people that we're working with, Greg Palast and some of the Palast and the experts who did the work in the findings of Georgia also did it in Wisconsin as well. What we do know in Wisconsin, as the majority of people of the 129,000 are African-American voters and students. At least 10,000 are students at the University of Wisconsin. And that ruling will be made on this coming Tuesday.
All right. LaTosha Brown, Black Voters Matter. We surely appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Back to our Roland Mark Unfiltered video in just one moment. As our community comes together to support the fight against racial injustice, I want to take a second to talk about one thing we can do to ensure our voices are heard. Not tomorrow, but now. Have your voices heard in terms of what kind of future we want by taking the 2020 census today at 2020census.gov? Now, folks, let me help you out. The census is a count of everyone living in the country. It happens once every 10 years. It is mandated by the U.S. Constitution. The thing that's important is that the census informs funding, billions of dollars, how they are spent in our communities every single year. I grew up in Clinton Park in Houston, Texas, and we wanted new parks and roads and a senior citizen center. Well, the census helps inform all of that and where funding goes. It also determines how many seats your state will get in the U.S. House of Representatives. Young black men and young children of color are historically undercounted, which means a potential loss of funding for services that helps our community. Folks, we have the power to change that. We have the power to help determine where hundreds of billions in federal funding go each year for the next 10 years. Funding that can impact our community, our neighborhoods, and our families and friends. Folks, responses are 100% confidential and can't be shared with your landlord, law enforcement, or any government agency. So please, take the 2020 census today. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov.